Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is Ashley if you're new, and I am here early in the morning with crazy hair that never stays. Like they never stay behind my ears. Like my hair just pops right out every time. Every time. But anyways, my hair is not behaving this morning, but I'm sitting down with you drinking my cup of coffee, trying to wake up. And I thought that I would do the Q&A that I was talking about doing with you today. Now, originally I said that me and Joshua would be doing the Q&A, but even though Joshua is comfortable doing videos with me, I don't think he was comfortable asking some of the questions, answering some of the questions that you guys asked, because it just kind of, he's still going through the guilt and shame part of his journey, and he's still struggling with that. And so that is something that he's asking the Lord to help him with. And so therefore he doesn't really want to talk about it. Look at my eyes. I'm so tired. Can you tell? So tired. I need to wake up. I did not sleep well last night. I woke up in the middle of the night, could not go back to sleep. That has been my life. Yes. So, anyways, we're going to do this Q&A. Look, there they are, flapping out. Like, it's going to happen every time, and I can feel it, and it's annoying. So my kiddos are running around playing as usual, so you're probably going to hear them. You're going to see me sipping on this cup of coffee because Lord knows your girl needs the coffee. Like, I'm not even joking. Gotta have it. But I'm still going to do this Q&A. So one of the questions that you guys asked that I feel was so crazy good is it came from my friend Tanya. And my friend Tanya was actually such a strong rock for me during that time. Like, I really don't. My dad and Tanya were really, really my rock during that time. I met Tanya here on YouTube. She lives way, way away from me. And she's being a vagabond, a traveler now, a gypsy. She's being a gypsy. And so she doesn't have a permanent residence, but she's still usually very many states away from me at all times. And so to have her is a true blessing, to be able to have found her, because she doesn't live anywhere near me, and we still found each other here on YouTube. And so that is a true blessing. And she came back to me at a time when everything was about to blow up in my face, and I didn't realize that. And I think that it was the Lord putting her there at the exact time, because I would not have made it without her. Like, I talked to her every day, all the time, telling her things that were going on. She cautioned me. She said she was worried. She celebrated with me. She prayed for me, all of the things that a good friend is supposed to do. And I'm very thankful for her. But she asked the question, how could those around you have supported you better? Like, what are the things that those around you could have done during the time that you are going through with each other? And I think that has kind of two parts, okay? So, and I did talk to Joshua about these questions, and he did give me that from his perspective. And she asked because she wants to be the best mama that she can, and she wants to be the best mama-in-law that she can, and she wants to support her kiddos, especially because they're all married. Well, her 3 boys are all married off now, and I'm sure her other children will be marrying off eventually, and she wants to be that support for them. And he said that the real answer is there's nothing anybody could have done for him, because he was not in the mindset to receive and accept from anybody. And I think that's such a huge thing for him to say, because that shows that, like, he doesn't place the blame on anybody but himself. And he said that, he just wasn't, like, everybody was encouraging. Everybody was trying to text him. Everybody was calling him. And he just could not accept love. He could not accept help. He could not accept anyone being there. He could not accept these things from anybody, because he just didn't want it. And if you don't want love, and you don't want help, and you don't want support, and you don't want to change, you're not going to change. Like, if you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it. It doesn't matter how everybody in the whole world supports you and is there for you and does all the things right. If you don't want to accept that love and you don't want to change what you're doing, then you're not going to change. So I'm going to pause right here because I probably shouldn't have jumped right in. I probably should have given you a little bit of a backstory in case this is your first time watching. So me and my husband have known each other since he was 10 and I was 13. We were really, really good friends. When I was 17, well, I was almost 17, so I was 16, about to turn 17, we moved here, which is 3.5 hours away from where me and my husband lived in the southern part of Alabama, up to the northern part of Alabama. And so we did that for my dad's church, and it was really hard because I left everybody that I've ever known, and it was really hard for him. It was really hard for our friendship, but we stayed in touch. We talked on the phone all the time. He came to visit. And then eventually his mom, who we won't even get into that, but his mom has like really big problems, and she like followed my family up to northern Alabama to go to church here and be here. And 2 years later, so that was when I was like 18, but at that point I was about to leave for college, so we were kind of separated again. So throughout life, we've still been really fast friends and really been connected even though we were separated. We've loved each other as friends throughout relationships and horrible choices, especially on my part. And he's always been there for me, just always waiting on the sidelines and just being in that friend zone. But I was always like heavily attracted to him. But he was 3 years younger than me, so it was a little bit odd. And he, was that kid from the wrong side of the tracks. And he just had some issues because of his childhood with anger issues. And, he was kind of a serial dater, and he, it wasn't the time. And so I married, when I was in college. I actually married someone from where we live now, but I was going to college 2.5 hours away, but I still ended up marrying someone here. So I left college and came here and started going to college here. Got married. Joshua was actually in my wedding. Fun fact, he was an usher in my wedding, and poor thing, like he hated every minute of it. It was absolutely horrible. And so he met the woman that he ended up marrying, which is Jaren's mom. He met her the night of my wedding. So he was going on the prowl. He was looking, and he married her 6 months later. So he met her the night of my wedding and married her 6 months later, and they were married. They were off and on their whole marriage. They got separated, I think, like 2 months after they got married, and then they got back together and got separated again and got back together. And all of these things, they just didn't gel. And it just, then she got pregnant, and they tried to get back together one last time. Well, right after she had Jaren, I got a divorce. It was a very rocky marriage. He was, go figure, a heavy alcoholic. But it was, it was different. It was just really, really bad. And so, he ended up cheating on me and deciding to leave the marriage. I was willing to stay and make it work. He was not. And so we ended up getting a divorce, which, looking back now, like, I never really loved him at all. And so I didn't know what love was at that point. I was 21 when I got married. I was not ready to get married in any way. And I just thought that was the next step of what I was supposed to do. I kind of got caught up in the relationship because I had always had these relationships that my parents didn't want me to have. And then they actually liked this guy. They introduced me to this guy. They talked about how they thought I would like him. And so I thought that they approved of it and wanted it. And that's what I went with. Like, I went with that. And things progressed. He asked me to marry him. I said yes. Like, I did like him, but it wasn't love, Like, it just wasn't that wrapped up head over heels in love, give you butterflies kind of feeling. I just didn't have that. Even on my wedding day, I was just like, do I even want this? I even told my dad as we were getting ready to walk down the aisle, I looked at my dad and I told him, I was like, Dad, I don't know if I can do this. And he was like, well, it's a little late now. And he was not that dad that was like, okay, baby, if you don't want to do this, we're walking away. And if he would have been like that, I think I probably would have walked away. I don't know that I would have went through it. I mean, I just, at the rehearsal dinner, like, he was serenading me and singing me this song that he had learned to sing on the guitar, and like, he was singing it to me, and like, I felt nothing. I just wasn't feeling it. And my bridesmaids were like teary-eyed, and they were like, that's so sweet, why are you not emotional? And I was just like, I don't know, like, I don't know. I'm not emotional. Is that a bad thing? Which I'm not an emotional person anyway, especially when I'm in the spotlight. But still, there were feelings like I just wasn't feeling it. And so, there's no hope for this hair and it's driving me insane. Like I can feel it just pulling out and it's driving me nuts. So I'm sorry if I'm fidgeting. But yeah, so that was my marriage. I had just gotten a divorce. He saw that the ring was missing. He was in like a tumultuous, terrible, toxic relationship at that point. They were separated, and he started going through the things he needed to do to really finalize his divorce. He had already filed for divorce at that point, but it wasn't final yet. And yeah, as soon as he saw that ring off my finger, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. And so he got a divorce and we started dating. And yeah, that's it. I've been in Jaren's life since he was like 3 months old. And yeah, and we got married a year later. So we started dating and got married a year later on my birthday. We went to the courthouse and we got married. We told no one. We told no one, and we just got married. And so yeah. So, you know, did we need to get married at that time? No. There was a lot of healing that I needed to do. There was a lot of healing that he needed to do. There was a lot of growing up he needed to do still. But I think in our hearts, we felt like this is our chance. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we don't do this now, we might miss each other again and go in separate paths. And this is it. Like, there was just something that we knew about that. You know what I'm saying? And we might have been right. Like, we might have moved off and found someone else. And when I healed, I might have looked the other direction or something, you know, and it might be different. And we wouldn't have had our love story and we wouldn't have all these beautiful children. During our marriage, it's been rocky. Joshua was never saved. He was in church with me, but it was as a prisoner. He thought church was important for our kids, but he was a prisoner. It was like pulling teeth to get him to be involved or let me be involved in anything. It was always like a struggle, and it was rough. And so we have went through marriage, and you know, I took care of the kids and I worked full time, and you know, then there's a video of this, and I can't remember what channel I've put it on because I have so many channels and I don't remember what channel I put this on. But I'm going to gloss over this part really quickly because we could be here for hours if I was to tell you our entire story. Like, we would literally be here for hours and hours and hours, and maybe we'll tell you the full deal one day. But I was, this is like a whole separate video. But I got trapped into, I'm trying to say that correctly on both ends, like not give myself too much grace, but at the same time, like tell you the truth of what it was. I worked full-time at a department store, and it was Kohl's that I worked for. I worked for Kohl's, and I worked for a man who was a very, very bad man, and he was a very horrible person. And he made advances towards me, and I said, no, I don't want that. You know, I love my husband. Like, we have our issues, but I love him, and I don't want to do that. I don't want that. And he was like, okay, I understand. And then I was able to leave. And then he called me back in there for something that I thought was work related and important. And then he shut the door and he didn't take no for an answer. And this happened for a while. And it was to the point where me and Joshua were not in a good place. We were dealing with the stresses of marriage. We were dealing with a new baby. He was a toddler at that point. Tristan was 2. And we were dealing with, like, my mom didn't really want to keep him, but she did it because there was no other choice. And we both had to work, and I worked a lot. I worked like, I say a lot. There's many people who worked more than me, but I worked like 40, 50 hours a week. And I worked strange shifts. So I didn't always work the same shift. Sometimes I would go in at 4 in the morning. Sometimes I wouldn't come home until 4 in the morning because I would work all night shifts. sometimes I would work in the middle of the day. Like, it just depended, and there was no routine. And so me and Joshua just, and money was tight, and sometimes I made as much money as Joshua did, and he felt the burden of that because he felt like he should be providing better and he wasn't. We were struggling with things. We did not manage our money well. It was just, we paid our bills, but that's it. We were broke all the time, and it was rough. And so, we got married and had nothing. I think we had bought like a pot set and some plates, and I had my bed that I took from my parents' house, but it was old and rankety and jankety, and it was just, we were just going through the struggles of marriage in those first few years. And so we weren't in a good place. We weren't communicating correctly. We weren't having fun. We were just not happy with each other or with ourselves or with our life. It just wasn't going very well. We had our good moments for sure, but we just were not gelling very well with life. He felt like a failure. I felt frustrated because I felt like I was doing everything and he was just not there. He was checked out all the time, and that's how he does with stress. He isolates. And so that's what it was. It was just this hurricane of yuck. And I would go into work and I would talk about it with my girlfriends. And while I was talking about it with my girlfriends in the office area, he was hearing all of that. So he knew that I was having issues with my relationship, and he used that. It put a target on my back, basically. And because he wasn't a good person, he trapped me into this, and he knew that my marriage was rocky, and he knew that my kid was everything to me, and he used those tactics against me so that I wouldn't tell and I wouldn't end it, that I would just keep going. And it got to the point where, because I didn't know what to do, and because I was afraid and terrified, and because I was this and that, I just went along with it. I played along with it. I pretended like it was me who wanted it and it was all my fault, and that, I'm in this now, so what else am I going to do? I don't know how to get out of this. And I played along, and that's what I did. And it was a while that this went on. I don't remember things like Joshua does. He could probably give you exact dates, but I just can't do that because that's not who I am. But it was a while, and it was rough, and it was horrible, and I was always upset. I would go to the altar and beg the Lord to close the door. I would beg him to open a way out for me. How am I going to get out of this? I don't know how to get out. And every time I would try to pull away and just kind of get out of it gracefully, I was terrified of losing my job. I was terrified of Joshua knowing, because in that day and age, Joshua probably would have been in jail if he would have found out. He probably would have been in jail for murder. It would have been legit. And so I just did not see a way out. I didn't know what to do. I tried to tell people at work what was going on, so maybe it could just kind of fizzle out because they would know about it. It didn't work. They just ignored me. I tried to tell 2 different people at work. It did not help. It was just awful. It was absolutely awful. And Joshua found out about this, and I said I wasn't going to be talk about this for a long time, but I am. But anyways, Joshua found out about this. It completely shattered him to the point where, hold on a moment. Okay, they're being super loud. But anyways, so he found out about all of these things, and even though he just thought I was having a full-blown affair, and I couldn't tell him, right? Because of all the other reasons why I was scared to begin with. I couldn't tell him the truth because it looked like I chose this, because that's just playing along with things and going along with it, right? But I couldn't tell him the way it started out. I couldn't tell him how I got trapped in these things. I couldn't tell him what really happened, how I felt about it. I couldn't tell him these things because I was afraid of what he would do. And it was just easier for me to take all the blame. But that did something in him emotionally, and it pushed him away from me further, and it made him bitter and angry towards me. And it was this hatred towards me that just couldn't go away. And he had an affair back. It was a revenge affair. Here he goes. So when he had the affair, he started to feel horrible and guilty about what he was doing, because he was like, this doesn't make me feel better, it makes me feel worse. And he ended up telling me he just wanted a divorce. So me and Tristan left, and we were gone for about 3 weeks or so. And Joshua and I started talking things out and being a little bit more rational about things. I mean, we were still very young. Josh was 3 years younger than me. We got married when I was 24, so he was 21. He was very young still. And very stupid. We were both very stupid, right? You're so stupid and you think you know everything, but you definitely don't. And you're just stupid, right? I mean, I'm still young and stupid, even though I'm not that young. Like, you know what I mean? And so then, you know, we got back together. We tried to mend things, but to him, it was always justified because I did it to him first, and I never told him the truth. So fast forward 4 years later, and me and Tanya, this is when I first started really having a relationship with Tanya. She started to visit me, all of these things. Okay, my toddler is knocking on the door. Um, so to him, it was always justifiable because we both did the same thing, right? And he never knew these things. And this is when I started really getting to know Tanya and hanging out with her. And she was at my house one day, and I just let it all out. She was the first person I ever told what really happened, right? I was blaming it all on myself and saying all these things. And she was just like, Ashley, this just doesn't sound right. Like, this doesn't seem right. Like, something seems weird. So what really happened? Like, this doesn't sound like the Ashley I know. Like, what you're telling me, there's holes in the story and I don't understand. And so I just told her the whole thing, and she was like, Ashley, that would be abuse, that would be rape. Like, I don't, like, why are you putting all of the blame on yourself? You don't understand the situation you are in is called rape, and he did that on purpose. Which, might I add, that now that person is in jail because he molested and raped his 15-year-old daughter, and he is in jail for life on a life sentence because of the horrible things that he did. And he did the same thing after I left that workplace to someone else after me. And so, yes. And he was undergoing investigation for the reason why he's in jail right now while all of this is going on with me. So let me add that in there. So he's in jail. He's not going to come out. So, you know, the more I began to really explore what happened, because I had buried it down, right? I had taken the criticism, I had taken the, you know, the bitterness that Joshua felt towards me. He would make comments, he would say things, he would bring things up. And I had taken all of that because I felt like it was my fault. I had just blamed myself and felt like I could have done more. Like, I could have said something. I could have said no louder. I could have screamed. I could have made a big deal out of that. I could have, you know, told the, you know, those above us. I could have done something that I didn't do, and it's my fault anyways, and blah, 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 and all of these things. So I ended up telling Joshua, of course, hearing it 4 years later, that everything you thought and all of the feelings that you had been feeling for the last 4 years and built up these walls and done all these things is completely wrong. It completely shattered him, and he didn't know how to take it. And I think that he wanted to not believe me. He wanted to believe that I was lying. And he slowly started to distance himself again. And he cheated again, because you have to understand, like, Joshua's childhood and things that he has been through has caused him very emotional trauma, and it's caused him very much, like, not to be able to develop emotionally and all of these things. And so running away is his best defense, and that's what he has always done. And he wasn't a Christian person, so he can't gain that healing and that love and that peace from the Lord. And so he's doing it by himself, and he didn't do it well. He sucked at it, you know, that he just did. And he would isolate and run away, and that's what he would do every time. And so I, of course, found out what was going on, and, you know, he started pushing me away and trying to get me out of there, because that's what he does when he feels guilty about it and he doesn't know what to do. And so we went and spent the night at my mom's. They were out of town, and then I started to really talk to him. I was like, look, if you just tell me the truth of what's everything that's going on, keep nothing from me, then we'll work on this again. Like, goodness gracious, you know, like all of these things, like, and so we did. And then we were happy for a long time, and then we started building back, because once that happens and that breach of trust happens, you have to build back again. You have to tear it all down to the foundation and build it again. But our foundation was not on the Lord. So you can only build up so good by yourself, right? If your foundation's not on the Lord, or if one person's foundation is in the Lord, but the other person's foundation is not, then you can only build a structure that's so strong. It's not as strong as it could be, right? It can only be so strong on its own, on your own. And so that's what we did. And it was about when COVID hit, and he lost his job like so many other people. And he was in a downward spiral of despair and depression. It was so bad. We didn't know what we were going to do. We were getting unemployment, but I don't know if you know this. We have like 50 children to feed, and unemployment is not enough. Like, we couldn't find anything else that was open in his field. Like, everything was shut down that he had ever done. And he went from making really great money to nothing at all. We didn't know what to do. And then he started working with our neighbor at the company that he now works for. His neighbor was a contractor there. Our neighbor was a contractor there. We became friends with him. He started working underneath him, and it wasn't good money. And I didn't like it because I was like, we're never going to make ends meet on this much money. Like, we just can't. It's not enough money for us. It's just not. And he was like, I know, baby, but I really feel like there's room for growth, and I could be a contractor if I just really work hard and do this. Like, I really want to try to do this. And I was like, yeah, but they're saying that contractors usually don't become contractors for 5 years. Like, we cannot possibly make this money that we're making now and do this for 5 whole years. Like, we can't, that's not going to sustain us. And so he was like, yes, I know, but if you just trust me, then I think we can make this work. Hold on just a second. Okay, that was Joshua calling me to ask me what kind of tripod I needed because mine is shot. Okay, so anyways, I don't even know where I was, but the point is that he started working for them and was like, just trust me. That's where I was. I was like, okay. And so that's where he started working, and he worked his tail off, and then he started doing everything, extra jobs around the warehouse, whatever he needed to do. We got furniture from there, and it was just God sending that to us. Like, we got furniture from there because they go and pick up a lot of different things from companies that like discard it, and you can have it if you want it because they're just going to throw it in the trash. And if you want it, you can take it, or you can just throw it in the dumpster for them because that's what you're going to do. You're going to discard all of their stuff that they don't want. Like, you pick it all up and you get rid of it. So he did some of those jobs and got like tons of office chairs that are worth like $400, and we would sell them for like $35 a piece, and we would have like 80 chairs, and that's how we made Christmas money, and that's how we made food money, and that's how we made rent money, and that's what we did. And we hustled, and we moved, and we were never closer than that. Like, I can honestly say we're closer now, but that's a whole different story. But we were never like closer up into that point from those moments when we were thinking of things together, racking our brain on how we were going to do this. We went and got pallets that you can get to resell. We went and did that. We went and just whatever we had to do to scrape and hustle for the money that we needed to make ends meet during that time period. He worked like that for a year, but during that time, he broke both of his feet. And when he broke both of his feet, he was out of work and could not walk. He couldn't do anything, and it was horrible. He was like that for like a month. And you're saying a month, you broke both of your feet. Yeah, he went back to work with a boot. And he moved heavy furniture and did things with a boot on his foot, and he did it. Because that's just who he is. He's a hard worker for his family. He never stops. He never gives up, and that's who he is. And that's one of the things that I love the most about him, is that that's just who he is. And so we went along like this for a while, and then he became a contractor. But during the time that he broke his feet and was so upset, like, he started to get to where, and then after that, it was probably a little bit after that too, but he started getting to where he was drinking a bit more than usual. So he was a social drinker, and he did not drink very often at all, but he would drink ever so often. We would have people over and grill or whatever. He would be cutting the grass, and he would drink a little bit, and it was really just no big deal. But then, like, when all of that happened and the stress of everything, he also had, in the middle of us being broke, um, he had a horrible toothache. One of his teeth, like, broke completely. It was excruciating. I mean, it was so bad that one night he was, like, getting drunk as possible on purpose so that he would just knock himself out. And he was, like, it was just terrible. He was like banging his head on the porch and like freaking out because the tooth pain was just so bad. I don't know if you've ever had like a legitimate horrible toothache, but it's the worst pain. Like, I've never seen him in so much pain, and he can withstand pain, and I've never seen that before. And so he had a toothache, and he was working with the dentist to kind of manage the pain, do what she could, working to save the money that we didn't have to get a crown on it, but it really needed a root canal, like all these different things. It's really expensive. It's like $1,000 when you don't have insurance, right? It's a lot of money, and we just didn't have it. I mean, we were doing things to sell furniture and all of this because we were so broke. And he she told him that if he swished his mouth out with whiskey, that it would kill the germs, and that, because he didn't want to keep taking the pills because he has a very addictive personality. Go figure. So he didn't want to keep taking pills for it, and he couldn't take the pills while he was working. And so he just, instead of swishing the whiskey, he started drinking it, and then instead of drinking it, he started guzzling, and it just kept escalating. Like, the stress of everything, he was using his toothache as an excuse, and it just slowly started building, right? It just slowly started building. So he started drinking more and more. And at first, I did not realize this. I really didn't. I didn't realize this. But then I started finding empty bottles everywhere. And I was like, what in the world is happening? And then he started not coming home. And then he started staying gone for long periods of time and disappearing. And then he started getting very angry and being very mad and mean and aggressive towards me, not physically, but just always mad for no reason at all. And then it started to where, like, he was really snappy and angry all the time, and he would stay out in the garage when he was home, and he would barely come home, and it was just awful. And so we started understanding that this was a problem, admitting this was a problem, trying to get control of this problem. But the way he was trying to get control over it just was all wrong, right? So this goes on for months, and it slowly starts escalating. And it gets to the point where we went on vacation with my family, and I truly understood how bad the addiction was then, because he started making excuses about how his mouth hurt. And I was like, your mouth doesn't really hurt. And he was like, yeah, it really does. I just need a little bit to, like, curb the pain so that I don't have horrible pain while we're around your family. And he started sneaking off, and he started getting drunk, and he was so drunk that he, like, threw up everywhere. I was having to make excuses for him because I didn't want my family to know about his drinking problem. Like, it was awful. It was really, really awful. And it got to where when we moved here, I thought things were getting better. Like, he was trying to stop and get control over this thing. He would not drink when he was at work, but as soon as he got off work, he would drink, and it would be bad. And so it got to the point where he was just never here. He would say he was going to get the kids food, for dinner, and he'd be gone for hours. He wouldn't come home. He wouldn't come home until the middle of the night. I wouldn't know where he was. Stereotypical, you're watching a Lifetime movie and this is what happens. That's what happened. There was no physical abuse, but it was very mentally and emotionally abusive. He wanted to hurt me because he felt guilty, and he wanted to hurt me in every way he possibly could. He was never sober when he was around me. He was only sober at work, never any other time. So he would leave for work super, super early in the morning, and then he would work. But when he was done with work, he was drunk, and I was never around him when he was sober. It's a miracle he's alive. He was driving this way all the time and doing all these stupid things he should never have been doing, and it's a miracle he's alive. It's a miracle he didn't hurt someone else, and all of these horrible things are happening. Well, when all of these things were happening, he felt so guilty. Like, he hated being around us, because if he was around us, he felt guilty because he wasn't the person he should be for us. The kids didn't want to be around him at all. The kids were scared of him because they thought he was going to get mad and start being mean to me and be ugly and be upset with me, and we were going to fight all the time because we literally like fought all the time. If I tried to shut down and be quiet, he would get even more mad at me because I was quiet. But if I talked, nothing I could say worked. Like, it was awful. It got to the point where it escalated when we went to my niece's birthday party, and he was drunk, and he just went off on everybody. Everybody could hear him. He was being belligerent. It was absolutely horrible. I was humiliated. And yeah, it was just really, really bad. Really, 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 really bad. And they started to understand like how bad his problem was. I had shared with him that he had an issue, but that's when they really understood how bad it was. And they were like, oh my gosh. So it just kept going this way. I wouldn't know where he was at. I wouldn't know if he was laying in a ditch somewhere. He would come home at 3 in the morning, and he would, flip the lights on, wake me up, and be screaming and hollering at me for no reason. Like, it was just awful. And all I could do in this time period is pray. And he was just a terrible person. He really was. He hated himself more than anything else. And he was just an awful person. And so it got to the point where I didn't know what else to do. And I just, what else are we supposed to do? I need to add that during this time period, rewind a few months, we had a miscarriage. I was about 8 weeks pregnant, and we had a miscarriage, which didn't help things. That just escalated his drinking problem, because then he was angry at God and all of these things when God had nothing to do with it. It wasn't God punishing us by taking our baby or any of those things. But it just escalated. Everything was escalating it. Everything was going wrong. Everything was just making it worse, not better. And I didn't know what else to do. And so I just, he started cheating on me. I mean, go figure. That's what he does, right? That's what he like falls back to, or it's what he did. And so I found out, I knew, I'm not stupid. I found out. And then I ended up looking over his shoulder and seeing him texting somebody else early in the morning. He didn't know I was there. He was in the closet getting ready. I came in there to tell him something, and I saw. So he ended up telling me. And then it was even worse, like blah, blah, blah. The drinking was terrible. It just never ended. Like, even though he told me it wasn't providing any relief, we weren't getting better. Nothing was going on. Nothing was happening. And I thought things were going to get better, and they didn't. They just got worse, and they just kept getting worse. So he didn't stop drinking, and so he knew that this just wasn't sustainable, right? Like, he's doing these horrible things to these kids. These kids hate to be around him, like he hated himself. And so he just wanted out, and he wanted us to go. And I don't know how to get a hold of this. I don't know how to change, and I'm gonna keep hurting you, and I just need you to go. And so that's what we did. And we packed everything up, and he helped move us. Yeah, true story. He helped move us. I mean, that is what he does, right? He moves people and places and all of the things. And he moved us out of here, and we moved into the little house. I have some videos up of us living in that house. We lived in the house that is beside my dad's church. And it is the house that I moved to when we first moved here when I was 16. And we lived there. And we went back to church at my dad's church, and we slowly started to kind of gain normalcy again and heal. And it was okay. And Joshua really hit rock bottom. He was still seeing that woman. And he was just, it was bad. And there's so many things that I feel kind of bad, like I don't really want to tell, because it's his testimony, and I'm sure that one day he's going to share it, and it will be absolutely amazing. But he almost took his own life, and he hit rock bottom, like rock bottom. He was doing stupid things that who even knows what could have happened. I don't even want to think of that. And he really just hit rock bottom. The only time he was sober is when he was at work or when it was time for him to come and see the kids. Any other time, it was bad. It was really bad. So he started going back to church at the church that we had been going to together. And one day he was in the parking lot and he didn't want to go in, and I don't want to tell it because it's so amazing and I want him to be able to tell this himself one day. But I will just say that he had a conversation with God and it was pretty much like, this is your last shot. I mean, this is it. I'm done with you. This is your last shot. I've been trying to pull you for your whole entire life and you've been pushing me away. Take it or leave it. This is your last shot. And so he took it and he went in that building and he ran down to that altar, and I never would have thought it would happen. A matter of fact, to be honest with you, I didn't believe it happened. And so I looked it up on their YouTube, and it just so happened that he was right in the camera view so I could see it. And the altar call got caught on camera. It's crazy because they usually cut it off after altar call. When the altar call starts, they usually cut off their cameras, but they didn't, and I saw it. Yep, I saw it. I saw him come down to the altar. I saw him rush to the altar. I saw all these people rush towards him. I saw him crying. I saw the look on his face, and I knew it was legit because he would never do that. He's way too prideful to go in front of anyone. He's always told me, like, if I ever get saved, I ain't going to be at no altar. I'm not making a spectacle of myself and doing all that. But he did, and that's exactly how it happened. A big old spectacle was how it happened, and all these people came, and the pastor knew exactly who he was and what we were going through, and he called him out on it and said all these things to him, and all these things happened. And when that man got up from that altar, he was not the same man that I've ever known, and it was crazy. And of course, like, I didn't believe it at first. It was really hard for me to trust that it was real and not just a tactic to get back together and all of these things. And it was a big old show. Like that lady that he had been seeing was like, she lived far away. She lived like 3 hours away from here, and she showed up at my door and knocking on my door and threatening to kill me and threatening all these things. Like, it was a big old soap opera drama mess. But Joshua was a changed Joshua, and it was my Joshua, not Josh. You know what I mean? That's what I always say. Like, that was Josh. This is Joshua. And you came back to me. Well, you didn't even come back. Like, you came as someone completely different, as who I always hoped you would be and who I saw on the inside of you instead of who you had been being. And so it was crazy, the transformation. Like, it's crazy. When you say that you are saved and you come back as a new creation, all things are made new. Like, when the Bible talks about that, it is legitimate. I cannot tell you how legitimate it is. That is the truth of it. If I've ever seen that scripture come to life, it is in my husband. It was crazy how things worked. Like, we filed for divorce, we paid for the divorce, we got the divorce, the judge signed off on the divorce, we got the divorce papers back, like, you're divorced, blah blah blah. And we ended up doing all of these different things, and so many things didn't work out, with like child support being taken out of his check, and like they were giving us a hard time, and it was bad for both of us. Like, both of us were being screwed over because of it, and all of this different things. So we ended up going to court to see if we could change the way child support was being paid. They denied it. So we ended up nullifying the divorce, which we didn't even know that we could do, but it had been just enough of the window in the amount of days that you can nullify it, and it's like it never happened. It erases it. That's what we did. God restored that. Little did we know, like, we were doing that right when we had just started to talk about maybe making things work and get back together. But little did we know that we were going to get back together in the future, and that was just another thing where God was saying, you don't need this, on your marriage. I'm taking this away like it never happened. And just the restoration that I've seen, the man that he's becoming, the leader in our home that he's becoming, the head of this household that he's becoming. And he's not perfect. He has days where he starts to let things get under his skin and bother him, or depression tries to creep back up. But he has been sober and he is clean and washed in the blood of the Lord, and I could just shout all over this place about it. If that freaks you out, I'm sorry, but you don't understand the transformation and the change that has happened in my life and in my family's house and my family's life. This home is such a different home. The atmosphere of this home is a different home. My babies and their relationship with their dad, it was broken and shattered and completely obliterated. And that has been put back together piece by piece, slowly over time. And the relationship that they have with him is so beautiful. It's better than it's ever been in their entire life. And it's just a joy to see that God has been restoring and restoring and restoring and given us back better than before. And just having that godly man that I've always wanted and prayed for. And it's just amazing to see that. It really, truly is. And he's been helping other people with addiction and really trying to pour into them and letting them know that it's possible, and seeing him minister to other people with the same issues that he had is so beautiful to me. He signed up for a teaching and preaching class for people that feel called to teach or preach, and we've went to marriage classes and all of these things, and just seeing the transformation is truly crazy to me. So that is our very long backstory and our testimony from my side of things of what happened. And I keep being uncomfortable because I have to move all around all the time. But so with all that being said, and I just told you a long drawn out story, that getting back to this question, he feels that there's nothing anybody could have done, right? Because he was not in the mindset to receive from people. But from my mindset, I feel like there wasn't enough encouragement. There wasn't enough, like, let me talk to you. We're going to get through this. And I feel like I'm the only person who was trying to pull him through it. And he just wasn't receiving from me at all. I feel like if he had had somebody for him that he's being to this other person and these other people that are going through this, if he had had somebody like that, then he might have had a chance. But that's just my feelings about it. He doesn't feel that way. He feels like everybody did everything they could and it was all his fault because he wasn't in the mindset to receive from anybody. He was shutting everybody out, and that was his own fault. And that is true. But I feel the best thing that you can do if you're trying to support the ones you love and they're going through a hard time, whether it's infidelity or whether it's just marital problems in general or whether it's alcoholism or an addiction, the best thing that you can do is get on your knees and pray for them. And that is the best thing that you can do. And I know it sounds so cliche and so simple, but that is the best thing that you can do, is say, I'm here for you with no judgment, so that you can vent and you can tell me everything that's going on. And there's no judgment, but I will tell you exactly the way it is. And it's Tanya that asked this question. And Tanya, you're the best person I know at that. Like, you will tell how it is, because you did that to me so many times. Like, Ashley, I really don't agree with this. I think you're being stupid. Like, I love you, but I think you're being stupid. And that's what people need. That's how you're truly there for somebody. Because if you're there just as a yes man and you're going to tell them everything they want to hear, you're not a true friend, you're not a true mom, you're not a true person with a relationship with them, because they need more than that. They need you to say, you're screwing it up and this is how you could fix things. And you're the best at that. And so honestly, if you want to be there for your kids and you want to be there in their relationships and support them, you're probably already doing it and you just don't realize it. You're probably already being the best encouragement and the best support that they can have, and you just don't really realize it, because you're truly amazing at that. And it helps me get through everything, and it still helps me to this day, and I'm sure that you're the same way in their life as well. So I love you very much. Some other questions that have been asked is, how do you handle infidelity and how do you get past that? How do you trust that person again? And the answer to that is very slowly, very tentatively. There's still times that I have issues and doubts, but that person, if they're truly repentant, they have to be transparent with you. Everything has to be out in the open at all times. And they have to deal with the fact that you might have issues every now and then. They have to deal with the fact that you might need reassurance and you might need to go off and be like, I know you're cheating on me again. And they need to be okay with dealing with that and not be defensive and not be ugly, but say, no, I'm not, babe. This is what's really going on. Look, and be able to show you everything and really calm you down and love on you extra and be there for you to nurture you through that, because it's a process and it's not easy. It's not a one-time transaction where you say, I'm sorry, and then it's just all wiped clean. Like it has, but like I said, it all came crumbling down. You have to build that foundation. But the most important part is that foundation be on the Lord, and then you can start to build up. It's the only way. I mean, look at our story. Look at how many times it came crumbling down. We tried to build it from the ground up and it still came crumbling down again, right? Because our foundation was not on the Lord. And now that it is, I feel like we're truly building a brick house and not a straw house. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it takes, is the Lord. Absolutely, 100% it takes the Lord. And if your spouse is not, you know, a follower of Christ and they don't want anything to do with that, I have been there and I would love to talk to you about it, because it is the hardest position that anybody could be in. And your prayer and your sacrifice and your obedience to the Lord will cover your house. And it says that in the Bible. I can tell you exactly what scripture it is. I know it's in the New Testament, but I can't exactly remember where it's found. But it talks about how, I think it's Timothy or Titus, I can't remember. But if you are saved and you're covering your house in the Lord and you're covering the house, then you stand in for your spouse. It could be, Paul could have wrote it. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. But you are encompassing that. You're putting a covering on your house. And so, you know, when your prayer makes things happen. I mean, so many times I can think of ways that, like, Joshua made horrible decisions because he wasn't hearing from the Lord. He was just going off of his own thing. But my prayer helped us not fall into the gutter. My prayer helped the Lord still bless us in spite of that. You know, despite that, my prayers covered us from being in financial ruin because of the situations and the choices that he made that were not of the Lord. And he can do that for you too. You can cover your home and your family and your spouse until they get there, and they can get there. I would love to pray for you. If you are a follower of Christ and your spouse is not, and you are struggling with that, please, please, please reach out to me so that I can call you out by name and pray and go to war with you for your family and for your family's salvation. Please just let me know in the comments below, or I'll leave my email and you can email me. A lot of people do it that way because they're shy and they don't want to talk about it out loud, but please do that so I can help cover you in prayer. If you have stuck around this long, I love you, and I'm so sorry I'm long-winded, but I wanted to share this story with you. There's a lot of other questions that I want to answer, but this video is so long already. But I can tell you that this was the backstory. If you have any other questions and there's any other questions that you want to ask, feel free. There's no question that's too crazy. There's no question that's too deep. Please, 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 please leave those questions down below. Or some of you have emailed me, or some of you have Instagram messaged me, some of you have Facebook messaged me. You can do any of those things, and please ask the questions that you want to know. But I think that now that you have our backstory, maybe you have other questions that need to be asked, and I will answer the questions that I didn't get to because I talk way too much, and the questions that you asked next, and I will get to those in the next video that I sit down and do this. But thank you for hanging out with me in the morning, and thank you for drinking my coffee with me and just sitting down and having this chat. I just wanted to share with you a little bit of our story and kind of answer a couple of your questions as best that I could. I'm sure Joshua will do videos with me, but he just is in that, like I said, that guilt and shame. Like, wow, how could I even, he tells me all the time, it's like looking back at your life, but it was being controlled by someone else. Like, it's not even you. It's like having an out-of-body experience. Like, what? That was me? Like, I would never do that. And then you did. Like, that was the reality of it, is that you did do that. And so he talks about all the time how that's the hardest part for him, is that, like, he can't even believe that was really him. And so it's really hard for him to remember all of that. It's hard for him to put himself back in that mindset because he can't. And he honestly doesn't remember a lot of it anyways. So, yeah, he might not want to talk about all of those things, but I know I can get him to do some videos where we talk about, you know, where we are now and the things about our marriage now and all of those things. So definitely leave your comments and your questions down below. I'd love to hear about it. Definitely subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Like this video so I know that I can keep doing videos like this for you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Love you. Mean it. Bye.